In the opening of the movie Goodfellas, Ray Liotta opens with the line, "For as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster." Well, for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a warlord. I wanted to be Genghis Khan meets Alexander of Macedon with a few dashes of Hannibal of Carthage and maybe a little sprinkling of Erwin Rommel. And I've always enjoyed any game, book, or movie that dealt with building armies and conquering things and that sort of thing, even if they weren't really good, even if a movie is completely panned by critics, or a strategy game that's really dry and slow, most people can't get into it. I've always loved that theme of armies, conquest, politics, empire building, and so forth. So now that we're building the channel, we've had more people request to, or at least inquire about joining us on the Minecraft server than we could reasonably have on. The reason that is because it's a small private server I run myself, and at the moment, because I wanted a cheap server, it only has 8 seats, which means that only 8 people could be at a time, and more than 8 people are actually whitelisted at this time, people that we know or people that had at least one other person who could vouch for them. I've been playing pretty blatant favorites in terms of who I've been letting on, but if everyone who was whitelisted wanted to get on, they couldn't. Now, there was a time briefly where I was building something on another public server that had a lot of seats, and I was going to use that, sort of piggyback on that as a fan server, but I ran into various issues that I didn't like about the way the world guards and other things were handled there. So that and the fact that it created so much redundancy with the first Minecraft server, my private server that I was on, I just didn't think that I'd really be dedicating that much time to it. So for friends of the channel who wanted to hang out, it just wouldn't have been very good. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to form up a massive army and conquer an MMO server. Just completely dominate it and rule everyone with an iron fist. So I've been doing a lot of leveling and exploring and learning about the mechanics of this game, and I am completely confident that we can pull this off if we get enough people. Now, the system requirements for this game are relatively low, and it's a free-to-play game, so beyond the installation, it won't cost you anything to join us. The only question is, does the game appeal to you, and is this something you want to be a part of? Now, that's a question I can't answer for you, but at least I can give you a brief review of what to expect and give you an idea of whether this is something you want to do. And frankly, even if you don't like the game itself, but you want to sign on with the level 1 character and just chat with other people and use it as Second Life, it doesn't hurt me anyway, so go ahead. I'll even let you into the guild. As long as you're not making trouble, you can use it as a social medium. I don't care. If the constant grinding, you find it too boring, no problem with that. It can be a purely social experience, just so we can chat with people who are subscribed. So, this game has a lot of really stark strengths and weaknesses. When you find an MMO that's still running, but it's not mainstream in any way, there are usually several good reasons why it has survived, and some good reasons why it hasn't become more popular. I really like the overall theme and many of the art design elements, the creature designs, much of the 2D art, and it's fun to be in this fantasy version of the planet Earth. But every place on Earth is at the peak of its historical significance. Egypt, of course, is in the age of the pharaohs. The United States, being a young country, it's in the industrial age. China and Japan are in their ancient and medieval phases, and so forth and so on. And all of the most famous people throughout history, they're all alive at the same time. So if you like that kind of rich role-playing experience, it has a lot to offer in that regard. The other major strength of the game is the combat. It has this squad-based combat that if you've ever played uh, one of the wizardry games that has the formations, you'll understand what this is about. You have up to 9 people in a party at the same time, and then you can have other people in reserve and actually switch them out in the middle of combat. And there's something on the order of 30 or more different classes that are ultimately available to you. So the number of party combinations that you can come up with, and therefore the number of tactics you can use, are pretty mind-boggling. There's also a second separate combat system called the tactical battle system that, unlike the random encounter format you might be used to from Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, games of that nature, this is a more like a tile-based strategy game like Final Fantasy Tactics or something like that, or Front Mission, something along those lines. So without a doubt, the way the combat is handled is, in my opinion, head and shoulders above what you normally expect from MMO combat. The multiplayer modes are especially rewarding. Doing cooperative PvE is a lot of fun. It's certainly more enjoyable than solo grinding. But also if you have multiple people together for the tactical battle system, that's a lot of fun. And of course, there are competitive PvP modes. There's duels, and there's also what they call the Free League and the Coliseum, where you fight against other players. Now, some of them actually have a handicap, where it gives the weaker player a boost in their overall attack and defense and so forth. And I found that it's pretty balanced. When you have any RPG that has PvP, there's so many different combinations of parties and so many different abilities that, there's some builds that just aren't that viable, and there's also going to be a pretty significant discrepancy no matter how they try to gerrymander the, the handicap. But I found that I can beat people 10 to 15 levels above me. All you can really do is set foot in the arena and do your best. And those battles are really intense and often turn on a dime based on how a certain spell, whether a certain spell procs, or whether a character gets stunned, or whether you reposition your troops in time. Like, I have my main character on the front line, and if your main gets downed, it's over, you lose. So often I'll barely be able to pull a match out of the fire by quickly rotating him to the back and putting a softer character up who can only take a few hits but just needs to hold the line long enough for me to heal my main back up. So the PvP is rewarding both in terms of fun factor, and also it is possible to level and gain a significant amount of gold just by doing that. You could just sign up for the Free League and Coliseum and really support yourself that way if doing the quests is too dull for you. And that brings us to by far the weakest point of the game, and that is the quest design in this game is probably the worst I've ever seen in any game ever. Now, keep in mind, I've been playing the shit out of this game. I've really been enjoying it. But a lot of people will not be satisfied with the way the quests are handled. There's basically two categories of quests. The first one is the Stranglethorn Vale type quest. Those who remember Stranglethorn Vale pre-Cataclysm. It's kill the lesser pumas, then come back and talk to me. Now kill the medium pumas. Now kill the greater pumas. Now kill the king puma. Okay, great. Now go talk to this person. They're going to have you kill leopards, and so forth and so on. I mean, this game makes no attempt to disguise the metagame at all in terms of questing. So you have to vary activities, because eventually that kind of grinding and killing 20 of these and 30 of these will get extremely dull. Despite all the praises I have to sing about the combat system, after 1,000 battles, nothing can really stay that fresh, unless you mix up your party formation in some way, or find some other way to spice it up. Nothing can really stay that fresh for that long. The other type of quest, the other category of quests, I should say, they are downright insulting. It's like you talk to this person, and they say, okay, I want you to touch your toes, and then talk to me, and then you complete the quest. Or I want you to rub your belly and pat your head at the same time, and then talk to me, and then you win the quest. It's really downright insulting, to be honest. It's not that it's just bad. I mean, it's obviously filler, but it's downright insulting. Sometimes the NPCs will actually ask you if you've been paying attention, and you have to type in some obvious thing from the plot just to show that you haven't been completely ignoring everything that's been said to you. It's a little bit like that South Park, where that guidance counselor or whoever, the psychologist, comes in and he diagnoses the entire class with attention deficit disorder because they rightfully fall asleep during like a Charles Dickens novel or something. Anyway, most of the quests will leave you probably with the same impression that I'm left with, and that is that these are like placeholder quests that the original designer on the team came up with, and then just before he was going to add the real quests, he had some like knockout, blowout argument, just raged at his boss and stomped out of the office, and now we're just left with the placeholder quest. We're left with the filler before they started to add the real variety or the really interesting stuff. So, keeping in mind that I acknowledge ahead of time that this game, in terms of the actual gameplay, is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, if you want to help, just find us on the Macedon server. All the servers are named after places in ancient Greece, or I guess those places still exist in modern Greece as well. The point is, find us on the Macedon server and look for the TortoiseClan guild. You'll see on the video, it has my character, his name, and the guild that he's in. I don't have enough points stored up to actually occupy a town, but the way it works is, once you're in the guild, everything you do gives us points. So the more people we have and the more active they are, the more points it gives us. So everything you do, PvE, PvP, crafting, derping around, whatever, it all adds these virtual resources onto our war effort. So again, if you just want to sign on here and chill, that's fine, as long as you don't get completely underfoot or become a nuisance or start drama or whatever. But whatever you actually do is appreciated, whatever help you actually offer us. And I will be doing everything I can to give new players instructions, directions, supplies, advice, or actually fight side by side and help level you, as best as I can. So, if you want to help, install the game, make the Nexon account, and look for Nojasama in the TortoiseClan Guild on the Macedon server. If this turns out to be a success, then what we can do after we've dominated this server is we could find other games or other servers in the same game, and just to continue to spread this virtual online empire of these pan-dimensional kingdoms and so forth, and just sweep everyone before us. The Conan bullshit. Hear the lamentations of their women. That's what I have envisioned. It all depends on how many people join and how active they are. I'm going to be continuing the Atlantica Online playlist, but it'll largely consist of updates on how the conquest is progressing and what we need, and also, if people repeatedly ask me the same question, I can answer it in video form in terms of a starter guide and general advice and strategies and so forth. And, of course, Sarahan, I don't know what his schedule is like recently, but he'll likely join us again. He already has an account on the server. I don't think he's started to level his character. But as some of you may know, he recently closed his Sarahan 06 account, much to the chagrin of many of his longtime friends and followers, and apparently much to the glee of one person who had been trolling him for years, but whatever. The point is, this might be the only place where you could get a chance to interface with him. So for those of you who are willing to help us out, thank you in advance, and I'll see you on the server.